And we are live. Welcome to another episode of the Uncensored Entrepreneurs. Today is so exciting because it applies to every single person that hears this message today. We're going to be talking about finding your purpose. Finding your purpose, it's a critical component of success with your business. And here's the thing, at the end of the day, it takes an introspect to work and to gain that awareness that propels you from the inside out. And once you've actually found that purpose, it is so powerful. You can transform your life and your business. Stay tuned. We'll see you on the inside.
And we're back.
Finding
your purpose. So, when we decided this topic, I kind of did it a little bit selfish reasons. But before we get into that, so we're missing a girl. We're missing a co-host today, Christina Whiteley. She is in a 10-day masterclass that she is teaching her group. And she actually is talking about finding your purpose. But as we were talking, we always have a little chat in our own Facebook chat. And those of you guys who know that, Robert and I have been friends and like work husband and wife for a very long time. And so Christina puts in there, hey guys, don't forget that I'm going to be in a webinar this week, so I can't be on. Good luck. And I said, and don't forget, I won't be on the webinar this week because I have my own talk show. And Robert, he said, oh, it looks like it's just going to be me and Starr, and does like the whole like dirty dancing. Like,
I was prepped the minute I thought that it was just Starr and I rewrote the entire show. I created a new logo. I had a new theme. I was ready to go. Sorry, Tina. Sorry.
So the Latin came out of me very quickly. And I said, oh, hell no. So I said to a little gif of me driving up, I said, Siri, navigate to Robert Wall's.
I wasn't cutting you out. I wasn't cutting you out at all. And quite frankly, and I just, each and every one of us, right? This is all part of this alignment and that path towards our purpose. When you think of purpose, it's more than just like one goal, one thing. And we were just talking about that before we went live. And, it's kind of funny for those that do not know. So just mentioning that, Tina, when you're in this world, when you're on this true journey and you know that the goal is transformation and to collaborate and to meet others. I mean, I've mentioned it maybe before, but for those that don't know, I only lived like an hour and a half away from Tina. And quite a few years ago, pre-COVID, I actually met her when I was speaking on stage and launching a collaborative book way out in San Diego. Mm-hmm. So here we meet in San Diego, right? Coast to coast. And we're here, by the way, in the Carolinas and in Atlanta. But it was just, the whole point that when you do search for this purpose in life, it brings you to all kinds of places, especially when you're open to all these possibilities and opportunities. Because when you're really looking for this purpose, and Starr, we just talked about that earlier, right? Like when you're just all in and you're like, I need to figure out all of this stuff. It takes, it's not something that you just put on paper, right? It's something that takes years to develop, and it continues to change, and you pivot along the way. So I'm really excited.
Have you found your purpose in life? Like your big purpose. Have you found it?
I think that
I have.
for myself, I think that the ultimate goal is there, right? The path in which I take, I said to you earlier, Starr, your purpose is finding that
See
true
how he
north.
keeps leaving me out of the conversation?
No, I'm not. But
He knows not to be on the show today.
but your purpose, like this true north, it doesn't mean it's a straight line. You're going east to west. Sometimes you even go south, right? Because you got to back up and change direction. But I found that like the big purpose for me, without a doubt, is serving, just serving in a big way. Of course, I love the product of transformation in my own life, but to see the transformation in others because of the gifts that God has given you, oh wow, that is the ultimate. But the way I get there, the way I get to this like final destination, I've been all over the place, and it's highs and lows, right?
Yeah, and I think purpose.
I'm like having a midlife crisis or or what? Because for those of you who don't know, I'm going to turn 50 this year, and my fiance keeps on
50 is the new
reminding me
25. 50 is the new 25.
He's 50 already, but he keeps reminding. So I'm turning 50 this year. I have a lot going on. Like, Tony and I are moving in together. We're planning a wedding because I'm engaged.
Yeah, you got quite a few things going on in your life, Tina.
And I have like a lot of stuff. I have a lot of stuff that I am launching in my business and redoing in my business, etc. And I feel like I'm like, oh my God, like what is my purpose now? Like, am I doing this? Who said embrace a 50 club? What's your Facebook user up there? What's your name up there? They scared.
I say embrace it. I say embrace it.
So there's a lot. And so I bought this intentional journal thing, and it kind of breaks it down, like, write your vision statement, write your mission statement, and that's how you're going to find your purpose in life. I'm like, that's BS.
Here's an interesting thing. The one thing that doesn't change, and Starr, I want your input on this, since you were the one that brought up earlier that you're still kind of figuring all of that out, right? Even though you're successful in business and your business is expanding and growing and scaling, you're still trying to figure out this ultimate purpose, right? And one thing that really shouldn't change much, it adapts a little bit, and that's your value. So like your personal priorities and values in life. When you start getting a little bit more in tune and aligned with those things, all this other stuff kind of changes, but you still hold true to those values. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, definitely. So I think you were definitely onto something, Robert, when you talked about service and us serving others, right? So when I think about my purpose, I'm definitely an entrepreneur, like have been for so long. I like, creativity and different things like that. Right now, my purpose is to serve women. I want other women to succeed in entrepreneurship. I have a passion for them to be able to have a certain level of financial freedom, not to be stressed, not to be overwhelmed. So I work towards that. But I also feel like, well, you know what? There's something bigger out there. I feel like I need to be serving in a larger capacity. So when you talk about that serving and you're like, okay, well, I know where my end goal is at. I feel like I should be doing more. And I also feel like I should be doing something bigger. And I don't know what that is and who I would support. And that's what we were chatting about before we hopped on.
Yeah. And, we said that changes, it evolves over time, right, Tina? I mean, think about your entire career path and all these things that have changed, right? Yeah. Everything keeps adapting. You talk about the big 50, but how much has happened from 1 to 50? Right. A lot of things in life, right? That's all wisdom. It's all part of, but we were talking about this right before the show as well, before going live, that, even my own wife, she's so driven. She's been driven her whole life.
Yeah, she is.
One of the qualities I've obviously that drew me to her, but, and she has a great, she just has a great.
Are you on the couch?
And no, I'm not.
Okay.
But she has, great insight and wisdom into picking the right spouse too. But anyways, besides all that,
I just love her very much. I'm so grateful for her.
Right.
Especially the warm bed that she lets me sleep in every night.
But she had stated, that like, because you're so driven, or she's so driven, and this could probably align with a lot of people that are listening now or later on the replay, but It's the fact that she's hit these goals. And so she's kind of like, well, like, what's next? You know,
Yeah.
like, where do we go from here? And how do you feel completely fulfilled? And that's the beautiful thing about this journey.
Yeah. I remember a couple years ago when I like hit that, that monumental like money target that I wanted. And I was making good money and I was traveling the world and all these different cities and everybody was just like watching me go all these different places. But I was still like, I mean, I was in the dating world too, so obviously I didn't have Tony in my corner, but it was still very lonely. And I was like, okay, because you always think if you didn't have money, you always think if I had money, it'll make me happier. If I had money, it'll bring me joy. If I had money, it'll bring, do this. Then you get money, and then you're like,
You feel the same,
I
right?
felt
I
the
mean,
same way, except
Yeah.
for I was buying everything that I wanted to buy.
Right. Maybe you're on that high, like in initially when you hit these goals, right? And you're like, wow, this is awesome. It's a great feeling. But then you're right. It brings you back down to reality and you plateau and you're going like, what's next?
Yeah.
What's my next move?
And I have talked to 7 and 8 figure earners. Like one of my bridesmaids, she's an 8-figure earner. And, she, had told me, and, I am at that point where I'm like, what is next? And I'm
Yeah.
like, what do you mean what's next? You have this and this. And she's like, what's next? Like, what's my next goal? So I did like kind of look up some questions to ask yourself.
Okay.
Like to find your purpose. So one of the questions, it says, what activities or experiences make you feel most alive? What activities or experiences make you feel most alive? Like, those things that make you satisfied, your work, hobbies, relationships, personal achievements. So, answering those questions, when you guys are watching, make sure you put them in the comments. I want to hear. And Mama Cheryl's watching. She's not watching Christina.
Hello. Nice having you on the show.
piggyback on,
We have you all to ourselves.
To piggyback on that too, Tina, like just trying new things to see how you feel. Because sometimes you were like, oh, I want to do this and I want to focus on that. You try it, you're like, that's not really what I want to do once you start doing it.
Yeah.
I just recently heard someone say that their kid started a business and they had to create and like actually physically make things. And they're like, oh, that is not for me. They were so excited about that journey until
but when
they
you
had
were
to like
little,
do the
maybe that
physical
was
labor.
for you, right? Like right now, you're like, I'm gonna be doing like 100 of these. Hell to the no.
Exactly. So just trying different things. Also, like mentorship is important. We're in coaching programs. We've been in masterminds and connecting with other people and seeing what they're doing. Robert, we talked about me doing some work with children, and you brought Precious on the show. She's connected with us, and I'll be working with her in a certain level of capacity and being able to give back. So now I'm serving in a different capacity than I have before. So that's going to open my eyes to, okay, what other things can I start doing to start feeling fulfilled? Like I do have a purpose.
I love that. And one thing I want to add with everything that both of you have said is the fact that the reason why so many, this is quite frankly, this is really unfortunate. So I hope everyone's tuning in right now and listening to this. The unfortunate thing is most people do not find their purpose because in order to walk into that purpose, it takes two things that the two of you have spoken on. One, you have to really step out of that comfort zone, right? And you have to kind of confront fear a little bit. Most people it's so hard, right? We just sit here and we feel comfortable with that day in, job, or even as your business. It's like, fundamentally you just don't like change. And so we stay in that little safe zone, but it really prevents us from kind of growing and finding that purpose. So that was one. And then with what you said, Starr, you've got to stepping into that fear. You have to try a bunch of different things. And the likelihood that some of those things, won't be successful is pretty high, right? I always say, even like failing at something is success, right? Because you're failing forward. But that's what happens. You have to try these things out to truly experience what it is that you're passionate about and what you want to do. And most people on paper, they're like, this is my dream job. And then they jump into it and they're like, hell no, this is not something, this is not something I want to do.
And I think your purpose can change too, like, in different
Absolutely.
seasons of your life. My 20s and 30s, I was a mom of three very, very active boys, and who was
Right.
so crazy. And, then in my 40s, I got a divorce and became an empty nester and started my own marketing agency and was in the dating world for 5 years. Thank God I'm not in that anymore. It was horrendous.
That's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother show. We'll save that for
really was like, people are like, oh my gosh, I'm in the dating world. Would you have any advice? I'm like, don't do it. Go see if you have a best friend somewhere or a good friend that you can find.
And you know what? That in itself, what you're saying, that journey changes, your timeline changes.
Yeah.
So now that you're settling down again and you'll be married in a year, right? That all of a sudden it's still your goal, your values, his goals, his values, but then it's ours as well, right?
So do you guys have well, both of you guys are married. You each have your purpose and then you bring your purpose together?
I think it needs to be individual and together.
Yeah.
But the individual should still align. I mean, obviously, to have a successful marriage, the individual goal should still align. You should still be able to support each other in that venture. You know what? Certain things that Kelly loves to do are not in alignment with things I love to do. But
Exactly.
I love to see her do the things that she loves to do. And so that's
passion.
One of my goals.
Yeah, I don't love the Cleveland Browns. My fiance, Tony Wilson.
Oh no! Oh, wait.
And
We have a bad signal. I think we're dropping
until the playoffs.
Yeah.
Robert's not going for it, Tina. And I think you guys are right. I mean, before I got into coaching, I didn't really support women. In some capacity, I did. Friends would ask me questions, but I wasn't really thinking about that. I was more so thinking about my kids and my family. And then, as you said, Robert, as things start to progress in your life, you start having success, you start seeing other people suffering from those challenges that you've overcome. Then it's like, okay, now I want to work on that. But I think the bigger thing is that you want to think about how you can leave a legacy behind. Originally, I thought about my kids, but it actually goes beyond that, because who is really remembered when they're gone unless you actually leave a legacy?
So true. And legacy, by the way, for those.
I was just going to ask you, what does legacy mean?
I was going to say legacy is a compass, right? Legacy is not just wealth. Most people just immediately always think it's wealth. Yeah. It's wealth, it's soul, it's mindset, it's heart set. It's all of these things that, quite frankly, we continue to sharpen the saw.
Exactly.
And that's what's amazing, right?
You can have changing the trajectory of what your past was.
Exactly.
How you grew up. You're like, okay, I want my legacy to be a different story. I don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. I don't want to have that abuse and the alcohol and all that in the home where all my great grandmother or all these people did. Yeah. Now we're changing it up here.
Yeah. We're breaking the chain, right? Yeah. And that's the interesting thing. Of course, I strive so that my children have wealth, and that generationally there is this systemic, just outreach of wealth and opportunity to carry them forward in their own goals as well. However, more important than anything, I would trade all of that as long as the one thing that I could leave, since I opened up with saying that I want to change lives. I've always wanted to change lives. I felt deep inside me that there was some gifts that were given to me from the day I was born, and that I continue to tap into, that I should be able to serve and give others. If I leave that to my children, that mindset and that heart set and the soul set, that is an achievement, right? I would like to know that 10 generations deep, we are a family that continues to serve in a big way.
Because how many don't serve, right, Robert? It's just the daily grind, the daily hustle, taking care of my family, going to bed, and that's it.
Yeah.
And
it's hard too to stop yourself and be like, oh, we need to get out of it. We need to get out of this day-to-day, rut that we're in and make a difference in the world. And I do kind of I guess I don't do that. I don't feel like I do it. My clients tell me I do it. And I think you just need to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, you're a freaking rock star. If Christina was on here, she'd be like, yeah. But so, my clients have said, Tina, you've changed my life. Because you helped them write that book. Last year, I wrote our first compilation book, Be a Glow Stick Girl, where I brought, 20 women sharing their glow stick moment.
I love it.
And just listening to all of their stories of, abuse and alcoholism and drug addiction and being homeless and losing a child and death and marriage and infidelity and just everything, and being able to take that glow stick moment and turn it into something shining so brightly. I'm like, oh my gosh, these are amazing women. So I actually am just launching volume 2. We are getting 30 women in there, and somebody is included in this book this time. And so I have about 15 people already in there, and just hearing their stories of it, and then them telling me, oh my gosh, Tina, this is the first time I'm sharing my story. And I'm like, oh yeah, it'll be fine. I'm telling them, oh yeah, it's nothing. But they're like, no, Tina, like you're
Yeah.
helping me get the story out. And I'm like, oh.
That's right.
So I have to do that to myself too. I have to understand too that I'm helping these women share their story, and yes, getting their book out, and yes, I'm helping them do that, but it goes beyond that.
Oh, without a doubt.
All those people who are reading that book in those bad situations, now those lives can be changed.
Absolutely. Whether you're journaling,
Yeah.
whether you're working on, the process of kind of mapping out your book and what's going to be in your book, all of that is coaching, right? It's a coaching process. You don't realize it, but just by putting thoughts and really the things that tug at your heart and your soul, putting that on paper, wow, it's so transformational just in itself, right? And then when it goes to print, as you know, it's
Oh my gosh,
it's
that feeling
huge.
when you
It's
get
huge.
that book in your hand the first time, you're like,
Yeah. Mm.
it's
And
very emotional. And I tell people, I
yeah,
said, like, listen, I've wrote 4 books, and I've had, have all 4 books shipped to me. But every single time I open that box, it almost takes your breath away.
It
Because you're like,
is, yeah.
oh, for the
Well,
last 4 months or 6 months or whatever. But even before that, your 5-year journey that taken you to get to this book
that's right.
story, you're like, oh, it's in
Here's
there.
here's the beautiful thing about that. So whether you're writing a book that's going to be put out to the public, anything that's displayed to the public, whether it's just even with what we're doing right now, having this
A
show
simple
live,
post on Facebook.
right? Whether it's posts, whether it's recordings, anything to do with being vulnerable and sharing a portion of your journey in your life, um, that's it's deep, right? Because most people think like a journal is a diary that we keep under our mattress, right? I'm just kind of using that as the analogy where it's just
So you
me and
guys
my
are in South
soul.
Carolina, go to
Yeah.
Robert Wall's house, look in everybody's mattresses. His journals are all in
Yeah,
there.
that's right. It's me and my secrets. Oh, heaven forbid if someone ever has to when I leave this earth, there's a lot of journals to look through. But good and bad, I'm sure. But the point of the matter is like putting that out there. Now you're sharing these things. It is vulnerable, but that's where transformation happens.
Yeah.
And here's the one thing I do want to put, because I think it's in line with all of our purpose. And that is when you put it out there, it's not just breakthrough for you, but it's a breakthrough for others. Because once you share your story or your content or anything out there, there are people that will connect. Your tribe, those people that are truly aligned with what you're going through or what you've been through in life. There's so many people that need to hear that story, and they're like, wow, I've been keeping this so deep
Right.
that it's kept me anchored to my past, and I can't experience and enjoy life in the present or the future. And so there's just so much breakthrough in being able to share, and it takes a while, right? Sometimes people just don't want to share.
I remember somebody told me if once you can speak from stage without crying, you're ready to tell your story. And I was like, how do you know you're not going to cry? But I remember, I don't know if you were there, but I remember telling my story. It was about 500 people in Vegas, and telling my story. And it was about an hour-long talk, and I told everybody that, I went through a divorce, depression, suicide, like all the things. And I got out, and of course I was like, "Oh my God, I have to pee so badly."
Mhm.
And I went to the bathroom, and I came out of the stall, and there's like 30 women in the bathroom, like all there, like wanting to talk to me and hug me and like just crying their eyes out, like,
Yeah.
"Thank you. My son is in the army." When I talked about my son being in the army, or, "Thank you. I was in a very abusive relationship, and, listening to you made me realize this,
Mm.
or thank you for this." And I'm like, oh my God, I was very overwhelmed because, when I was going through all that like 5 or 6 years ago, I felt so alone, like
Yeah. Most of
completely
us
alone.
do, right?
Mhm.
Most of us
It was
do.
only me that was going through this, and I had tons of people I could have picked up the phone and called anytime. And they
Mm,
would have been like, come over or done it, but I was ashamed and
mm.
depressed and in this dark place. And, it's being able to be vulnerable and share your story or whatever it is that you're going through. And don't share what you don't need to, other people to know. But just those simple stories, like just going through a divorce or whatever.
Right.
Even now that I am engaged, I have so many people saying, "Tina, I have watched you for the last 10 years go through a divorce and go through all these times." And they're like crying on the phone to me saying, "I am so happy for you that you found
Mm.
love.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been watching you through the stages, and you're giving me hope." And I was like, "Oh,
I love that. Yeah. And the fact that you're giving your story, regardless of how hard it was,
yeah,
right? Or still is in any capacity, your story gives other people hope.
yeah,
And again, that's why it's so important just to get things out there. And as I mentioned this, I think 2 episodes ago, I had said that, as I was kind of delving into my new mastermind for this year, one of the topics was people being able to share their story, just getting
mhm,
on camera. And it's so hard, right? What's the one statistic that most people
public
are
speaking, yep,
more fearful of public speaking than actually death itself.
yep,
So, uh, but the point in that is, you don't necessarily, if you have this fear of really talking about the down dirty details of your past, right? That true trauma. If over time, you may feel comfortable in sharing that, and then you'll even connect deeper with others. But if you can't, then just focus on the journey, focus on the breakthrough. Because if they see you in the now and they see that you had some type of trauma in life, and that maybe, or anything, maybe you were born poor, in poverty, abuse, I mean, you name it, right? Divorce, all kinds of things, the experience of death, all of these things that you've done in life, just seeing the breakthrough is enough to transform lives.
yeah,
Definitely. And also, Robert, I wanted to kind of bring awareness to those who feel that they don't have a purpose because they are currently in trauma. And
Mm,
you have to understand that people who are dealing with grief, for example, like Tina, I'm glad you shared your story. It's amazing that transformation. People were able to witness that online. But we have those, like in my household, we have lost my stepson just a couple of years ago. We're still going through that. And so when some people are in that phase of grief, it can go on for years and they have no feeling of hope.
yeah,
They don't feel that they even care to have a purpose because they are in so much pain. And Robert, I know you, and this is a very touchy subject, and I know Robert has lost a child as well. But Robert, you have brought awareness to how people can move forward
mm.
to find their purpose and move outside of that phase. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. When you face any type of trauma in life, um, people assume, whether you go and you get, professional help, therapy, whatever it may be. Some people turn, entirely to drugs. That should, yeah, we won't even kind of go down that path. But they assume that you have two choices: to completely be over it,
mhm,
Mhm.
right, and to move on in life, because people sometimes even tell you that, right? It's time to move on. It's time to get up. It's time to get out of bed. It's time, you know. So you assume you have to either do this or you have to stay in that pain forever, right? So it's either up or down. And that isn't the case. It's a journey. So I'm glad you mentioned this, right? It's a journey forever. I mean, my loss way back in, early 2003, that still affects me in certain ways at certain times. But what I have done is through this journey, I've come to realize a few things. One, I found more purpose for my life and in turn purpose for others, right? And being able to share that story, to embrace it. So it's really about recognizing the pain and the trauma that you've been through, no matter what, how you label it. It's recognizing that it's there. And I guess the best analogy I can say is, when you get a deep wound in your life, we assume, you put a Band-Aid on it and you don't want people to see it. You're just like, I got to move on. I don't want people to see this wound. I don't want to experience it.
Yeah.
But to understand that through time, all of these things, moving forward means acknowledgement. It means, how can I find purpose in this? Why did this happen? And is there a tool or an opportunity that I can share with others to help them in their life? And by doing that, that deep wound starts to become a scar. And that scar shouldn't be something that you cover up, right? That scar isn't so that it keeps you in the past, so that you sit there and you dwell on this. Because if that was the case, you might as well open the wound back up and just, it's about looking at it and going, you know what? I survived this, right? Like I can continue to work on self, and I can help others to do the same thing. And I found through that, Starr, that whenever I'm in deep pain and I can't necessarily figure out all the little dynamics of how to work through it, when I start to serve and help others, then all of a sudden there's like light, light is shown on that. And now you see purpose in that, right? And then in turn, it actually starts to heal you just by serving and helping others. So, and I know that each one of us do that. And Tina, like you just stated, when you're on stage and you had all these people come to you, it didn't mean that you were like, wow, I feel better, I'm healed, and I'm never going to cry about this again, right?
But I think I cried even harder that night.
Right. But it gave you that purpose that you can continue to tap into, because if you can transform one life, you can transform hundreds of lives. And so there's that. That's the thing about that. And so, Starr, you're right. I'm glad that you mentioned that. It took a lot for me to dynamically, when you lose a child, I mean, we're supposed to outlive our children, right? And just like with what you guys have been through, that's how it's, dynamically supposed to be.
Well, Robert, one of the other questions is, have you ever faced a significant challenge or setback, and how did you overcome it? What did you learn about yourself in the process?
Yeah,
I had to look. Kind of goes into that resilience and stuff.
I had to look deeper. And that's, we've talked about it before. I won't delve into my entire story, but what I found was, most people know that I had a daughter that was born terminally ill, and 2.5 years of, caring for her around the clock. That's like very little sleep.
Right.
That's created a lot of different other patterns in my life, but it was all about her and serving her in a big way. And when that loss happened, when she finally left this earth, there was a hole like in my heart. And I sat in that place for a little bit. I sat in that place for a couple months. And then I started to see the light again.
It was almost like bittersweet, because
that was in that event.
She's not in pain anymore.
Right.
She's, in heaven. But now you have a chance to get your life back.
Absolutely.
Where you can take it and transform somebody else's life,
Absolutely. And there's so many other people, right? And so just like with your book, and Starr, just like with the teams that you have built and transforming the lives of thousands of women, all of the different people that I've worked with in that space. And that's why I'm in that branding space, right? It's the mindset, heart set, soul alignment. Because most people, if you don't know who you are, and you don't know what your passions and purpose are, and to whom you would like to serve, if you can't figure out some of that, again, it's going to evolve. Then products and services are kind of the wayside. You won't be as effective in those products and services unless you're truly tapped into your purpose behind it. And so I just want to mention that again, that for those that are listening, that are in any type of space where they're
Yes.
stuck in a rut, they're hurting, they're in pain, whatever that may be, take time to reflect. Start with actually listing like any type of positives that you had in your life. Journal some of these things, and then connect with people that you resonate with. And even if it's, being vulnerable, sometimes it starts first with the unseen. It starts with, maybe a higher power. And then next, it's those that are the closest to you. And then sometimes you won't get favorable responses from those people, right? Friends and family.
Most of the time, actually.
So then we've learned this, right? So then you reach out to people like us, or that really don't know your story, that maybe we can have one-on-one conversations way before you express everything to the world. So,
and you know what? Be vulnerable, because those are the posts, like those vulnerability posts. I remember posting a huge long post about my trauma 5 years ago, my story. And I probably 500-600 comments on there, 20 to 30 personal DMs. And I was just like, oh my gosh.
yeah.
And the DMs were people who didn't want to say anything publicly that were going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, so.
But what does that tell you, right? There's more. At the end of the day, we all pretend, like if you're watching Instagram, if you're looking at TikTok videos, we all pretend that being all, like super wealthy, and I call it the Lambo movement, right? Having the fancy cars and the big houses,
the highlight reels.
Right. We all assume that's the pinnacle.
Yeah.
That's what we want in life. But based on what you just said, Tina, being vulnerable and having people connect and like those posts even more, it tells us that there's more people that are concerned and interested in healing than actually becoming millionaires. And that's perfectly fine, because you need to do that before you can have the other, in my opinion.
But then you only see the top layer, like that iceberg effect, right? Like you only see the top of the iceberg. You don't see what's going on underneath. You don't see how big it is. You don't see how nasty it is, how dirty it is, how broken it is.
You don't. That's what this show's all about.
Big iceberg on top, and it's in everyone, every single person, everyone who's watching, everyone who's commenting. You guys all have a story in it. It's whatever it took for you to get in this exact spot right this very second is your story. And somebody told me years ago that you are being selfish if you don't share your story.
Yep. You are not serving if you are not sharing your story.
And you don't need to share the nasty details of it or whatever, but the overall picture of it, I think you need to share it. And because you don't ever know who you might be saving their life.
That's true.
Go ahead, Starr. What were you going to say?
Yeah, and just to kind of segue into a little bit of a different topic, Robert, thank you so much for addressing that, because I do know that there are people in our audience who are suffering and stuck. And so I just want them to know that there is hope and to continue moving forward. But the other thing that's very important is personal development and growth. So you'll see that all of us here, I know Tina, Robert, Christina, myself, we're constantly reading new books, or we'll listen to audios. We are in mentorship programs, as I mentioned earlier. But when you are focused on that personal development and growth, you're going to get further ahead. You're going to start thinking about a different path, a different vision, different things that you want to work on that you would have never thought about before had you not been focusing on that personal development. And I always talk about, I got a master's degree, so I was always just focused on education. I really did not get into the personal development space until I got kind of into coaching. So you guys have been into it a lot longer than I have. So there's room for all of us to continue to grow. And I would start there, like find a topic that you're interested in to develop your, your personal growth, whether that be your life, your health, your business, and just dive into that and just kind of expand.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know one thing that I had to do was everybody, I would call people and, talk to people, and they're like, Tina, you're the freaking gratitude specialist. And I'm like, I know, but I can still be human. Like I can still be depressed, and I had to dive into like creating a morning routine. And so I created this like whole morning routine, starting with gratitude. No matter what it was, I made sure that I had 3 things to be grateful for, whether it was my 2 dogs who was with me that day, or the sun shining, or that I had a bed to sleep in. No matter how small or minute it was, I made sure that I wrote down 3 things every single day that I was grateful for. And then I started reading books. I mean, I was diving into like every personal development program. I went to hypnotherapy. I went to chirotherapy, like every single thing I could do to heal myself and to process and to let go of things. And I probably have 100 personal development books.
Oh, yes.
And I made sure that I read a book a week. And so I read 20 pages every day. I drank my lemon water. I, tried to take a walk for 20 to 30 minutes. I did yoga and meditation. And let me just tell you, this little brain does not shut off like at all. It does not shut off. I have to take like sleep aid at nighttime for it to shut off. But because it just keeps going and going. And so when you meditate, you're like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this.
Yeah.
So it's hard, but those things, and journaling was a huge thing for me as well. So creating a morning routine, I think, is so important too, to just align yourself with the right things that you need to do every day.
And
So
Tina,
true.
I was just going to recommend a book since she's talking about the morning.
Good. All right.
We usually recommend a book. So you can get a book by Hal Elrod, and he talks about the Savers method for your morning routine. And it can seem a bit lengthy, but there's even people who do like 5-minute segments of that. And I remember Savers. So scripting is like writing, saying your affirmations, visualization, reading, and I believe it's scripting. I might have skipped something down with the S's.
I had visualization in mine as well.
Yeah, so that's a great one for you to get on board with what Tina is talking about. You can just, purchase the book on Amazon or get the audio and just start implementing portions or pieces of that. And movement is the other one too, for the E for exercise. So Robert, I'm sorry.
No. I'm completely there. I was just going to say that, again, I was just going to reiterate, finding your purpose is a continuous journey. So just because we said that we've been doing all these things for all these years, it continues to evolve. And education, you can never over educate yourself or condition yourself in personal development. There's no way. I mean, people think of like the pinnacle of, and I'm not even saying he is for everyone, but the pinnacle of like Tony Robbins as somebody that is a breakthrough specialist. He has his own coaches. He has his own sources that inspire him, and he continues to work on his own personal development, right? And that's the beautiful thing about this journey. It isn't like one and done. It's something that you continuously do each and every day. You're going to have high moments. You're going to have low moments. For those that are speaking of books and journaling, for those that aren't aware, like of the hero's journey doesn't go like this, right? The hero's journey goes up and down and up and down and up. But little by little, you're actually making progress as long as you continue to push forward. And that really is the hero's journey. Every time you think, I'll just use money as an easy, relatable topic. Every time you've got money in the bank, you need a new roof. Every time you have just a little bit more and you're digging back out, the engine blows in your car, right? So there's all of these things that continuously, it feels like setbacks, but you're continuously building these small little building blocks. You're learning how to save. You're developing kind of a mindset around the day-to-day things that you need to do to become successful. And you'll eventually find out that where you were 5 years ago, you're way up here now, right?
And you got to remember too, like those journaling, the whole art of journaling is so you can look back and see your emotions and how you handled things and what was going on, and you thinking that you were never going to get through that. And here you are 5 years later, completely out of it. I mean, shoot, just a year later, I was talking to my sister. She goes, "Oh, 1 year ago today, you were here at my house." And I was like, "Oh, shoot, really?" Yeah. And I was like, 1 year ago today, I was in the dating world. I think I had 5 or 6 guys on my roster. So here it is, 1 year later, engaged.
Tony, you came the cream of the crop, man. You went from somewhere in that roster to the very top. So congratulations.
I always tell them, because I used to like make my roster like a car. Well, somebody told me this, and so I was like, oh, I'm going to take that on too. So, you have a car in the dating world, you have a car and you're the driver, and you always have somebody in the passenger seat, 2 in the back, and maybe even 1 in the trunk. And
oh my gosh.
And I was very quick to push the one in the passenger seat out if they messed up. Delete block, get out. Delete block. Which one of you guys want to come up?
Bringing Tina's story back into the world of business and breakthrough.
Yeah.
What she's basically saying is sometimes it's okay to have a slow journey. It's okay to be that person in the trunk, right? Because while everyone else is getting kicked out, you'll eventually get a front seat. So, anyways.
Look at Tony Wilson.
And our co-host, Christina, who's not here today, she has her workshop going on, and it is about finding your purpose. So, Tina, you're going to be doing hot seat coaching with Christina.
I am on Monday. So you guys tune in. I'm going to put the link here in the comments of how to join her. She's doing a 2-week workshop on just how to get yourself going, how to stay out of that rut, finding your purpose in your business. I mean, there's so many. I've been on for the last 3 days, and I obviously couldn't get on today because somebody had to work. Sorry, Christina, I just love you. Yeah. So join her. You can still join. You can still watch the replays. I think the replays are all going to go on all weekend this weekend. And then Monday, join us at 1 p.m. Eastern because she's going to do some hot seat coaching with myself on how to plan out some launches that I have going on. I just finished my course on how to write a book from beginning to end called Aspiring Authors Academy.
Yes.
I've been recording that for the last 2 weeks. So we're launching that here pretty soon in the next week or two. And it's just so exciting, but you also still need to have that person who's going to guide you through it. All 4 of us are coaches in our own industry. And, between the 4 of us, you guys are going to have $1 million company with, either way you go, if you have all 4 of us on your side. But speaking of that, Uncensored Entrepreneurs has a lot of stuff coming up this year that we're going to be hosting and planning.
I was even going to say with the links for Christina or any other workshops that we have coming up for each of us, another good source if you can't find everything that you want, follow, like, and share our social media. We're across the board, but specifically Facebook. It's facebook.com /Uncensored Entrepreneurs. That's our group. It's easy to find when you're just looking even under Uncensored Entrepreneurs. And that's a good place to put some of those links to, Tina, so that people can just tap right in once they're part of the community and they can find all types of free resources, right?
Oh, yeah, completely. And then, also, we have so many things going on. We're turning our talk show into into podcast stuff. We're creating a mastermind for you guys. We're getting a new website coming up in the next 2 weeks. There's so many things, and exciting things.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking forward to it. Again, hopefully just sharing a little bit of this, finding your purpose. It isn't just an immediate blueprint, right? The blueprint continues to evolve along the way. However, truly taking the time to really just work on self above all other things, right? Like there's so much going on in the world. We can sit in this space and we can be upset about, what's happening in the environment, the government, in business, the tax man that comes around every year and gouges me, right? Like all these things, right? We can be upset with all of these things that seem to be things that are holding us back. But at the end of the day, this is what's holding us back because we can't change that. The only thing that we can change is the things that we directly have our hands on. And that is our own emotions, our self, and how we can actually take this journey, our pain, our purpose, our passions, all of these things, put them together and to be able to serve the world in a big way and connect with those that can relate to the pain that you're sitting in.
Well, I want to know, what do you guys have planned for the next couple of months? What's on your agenda? Do you have anything that you're launching, Starr? You have anything that you're launching in the next few weeks, months?
Well, I always want to promote She Has Clients, a software for entrepreneurs and coaches. So I'm continuing to work on that. And yeah, I do have some fun things coming up, but you guys will have to wait to see.
What about you, Robert? Do you have any launches you have coming up?
I do. So Universal Branding, spelled YOU, Universal Branding has a brand new course that's going to be launching in probably the next 5 weeks. I wanted it to be out a little earlier, but what we're really doing is we're making most of that content. We're building it around people that are already in the community, your stories, your breakthrough. And so we're going to make it very special, and not just, a course that sits there with one person speaking about one topic from one viewpoint. It's really a collaborative. And that's quite frankly what I love about everything that we do, Tina and Starr, is the fact that we've all agreed before we even had the show that it is truly all about collaboration. It's about working together for a common goal, and ultimately, as we said at the very beginning, to transform lives. So I'm working on that course, and then of course anything else that we have that we're trying to get launched as a community, and hopefully we can get some boot camps and some other masterminds later on in the year.
And who knows, maybe a live wedding.
That's it.
I keep telling Ty, maybe she just eloped. He's like, we ain't eloping.
And Tina will be launching right after that a blueprint on how to get your man. So if you're interested, it's normally $5.99, but for $99,
you can get it today for only $97. No, I actually, for 5 years, I was in the dating world, and I used to pay for Match and Hinge and all this other crap. I literally have a mini book that I have been writing over the last 5 years. It's called 99 Worst First Dates. And it doesn't have any names in it. Everybody has a little nickname, but the stories in it are going to blow your mind. Let me just tell you that.
Sounds fun. Right.
So with that being said, continue, like we said, follow, like, and share. We're still looking for people that want to be featured on our shows. Things will continue to expand. So we're looking for a lot more. We're even talking about adding potentially even some pre-recorded episodes later on with the live episodes, so that we can bring you more content, more value, and really just aligning with our collaborative community. So thank you all. Thank you for your time. Christina, we missed you, but we know that you're killing it out there, and we look forward to hearing more about breakthroughs within the community. Thank you all.
Bye, guys.